Hi everyone, my name is Tammy Levy, and I'm the Director of Product at Kongregate. As it was just mentioned, I'm here to share with you how Kongregate has been able to successfully monetize in-game ads. First, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Kongregate and what we've done, and from there we'll jump into 3 case studies. I'm hoping that from here you can take the best pieces and apply them to your own games, ultimately improving your ad monetization. So who is Kongregate? We are a web platform and mobile game publisher that works with developers from all around the world. On mobile, we've launched 20 games, amounting to 65 million installs across iOS and Android. You might recognize our latest title, Battle Hand, which got Big Editor's Choice just last month. And about half of these games have ads in place. And 2015 was really the year of growth for Kongregate in this area, where 20% of our revenue came from ads. Compare this to the previous year where it was less than 1%. The best part is that this was all added revenue. Alright, so when we talk about ad revenue, we need to break it down. And it really comes to a few key elements. First is the quality of your traffic. This is how many clicks and installs you will get from your players. So how many people will click and install the apps that are being advertised. We can't really influence this as the game developers. Then we have the payout set by these apps. This is how much, say, a game like Clash of Clans is willing to pay to advertise in your game. Again, we can't really influence this. The last piece is the number of ad views or impressions. The great news here is that this we can influence, and this is what I'll be focusing on today. It is important to note that when we talk about ad types, there are several types of ads. First, we have banners. Those are the banners at the top or bottom of the screen. There's also offer walls. These are sets of offers that in exchange, players can get some premium currency. These are more well known on web games, but we've integrated them in a couple of our mobile games and have seen really good results. There's also interstitials. We all know those annoying pop-ups that come up in the middle of your game. I am going to touch on these briefly since we've leveraged them in a few of our games. And last but not least, rewarded video. These are the videos that players choose to watch. That is why we call them opt-in. And if you watch the whole video, you'll get a reward in exchange, making them super compelling. And this is where we've seen the most success, bringing in the most revenue, and it will be the focus of this talk. Now to the real talk. First case study I'm going to dive into is from a game that launched in summer of 2014 by a studio called Your Daily Fill, Epic Skater, which is an infinite runner skating theme. So you need to do tricks, connect combos to get the highest score. Epic Skater did really well at launch. We got a lot of installs, really good reviews, really good featuring. But the revenue we felt was falling short. And the reason was that the ads were not so great. There are a few reasons behind this. The CTA or call to action was a little bit hard to find. As you can see from the screen, it's one of many buttons, and it gets lost with all the other buttons and everything else happening in there. But the real problem came from the fact that the reward from watching the video was a small amount of coins. And you could just easily earn coins from playing the game. You got just a ton of coins from this. And you couldn't really spend them in anything. So there was no value to these coins that you were earning. So why watch a video to get them, right? And also as a side note, we did not have any custom stats tracking around ads interactions, so we didn't really have deep insight into engagement with ads. Due to all of this, we knew that there were many gains to be made and many improvements. So about 3 weeks after launch, we added interstitial ads. For this, we were only showing them at the end of a run and only every 5 minutes. And the goal here was to disrupt gameplay as little as possible. The next update that we did was about 4 months after launch. This was a bigger update where we added a skate shop where you could finally spend all those coins. And you can go and purchase skateboards, outfits, and more, making coins much more valuable. But the biggest gain really came from adding the option to watch an ad after you die. So basically, for those not familiar with Epic Skater, your run ends when you miss a jump or a trick or trip, and this gives you a second chance to keep going. And these improvements resulted in big growth. Before the changes, 35% of our game revenue was coming from ads. After the 2.0 release, we saw that shift to 75%. And the best part of this was that revenue from in-app purchases was not affected. This was all added revenue. Another way to look at this is see at how our ARPDAU changed. You can see the first bump when we release Interstitials that goes up, comes down, and then stabilizes. The interesting bump is the second one that comes after the 2.0 release. At that point, we saw a bump that did not decline. It pretty much stayed stable over time. And at this point, our DAU was fairly constant. So putting those two things together means that this was all additional revenue. Unfortunately, this change came well after our DAU had peaked, so the game could have performed much better if we had done this any sooner. So some lessons that we learned from the Epic Skater launch is ads should be truly integrated into the game experience. You need to make sure there's prominent surfacing so players can easily watch ads, and give meaningful rewards so players want to watch the ads. And they can't be an afterthought. You have to have the best integration possible before launch. You don't really want to miss that peak DAU. Alright, the next game I'm going to talk about is Adventure Capitalist, also called AdCap internally. Who here has played Adventure Capitalist? Awesome. So this game launched almost a year ago, so happy birthday, AdCap. And for those not familiar with AdCap, it's an idle game where you strive to be the richest magnet of the galaxy. AdCap also had a fantastic launch, and we made sure that based on the learnings from Epic Skater, we had a few key elements in place before launching the game. This means that we had an excellent ad design that I'm going to go over in detail in a little bit. And we did not launch with granular stats tracking, but we added that shortly after launch, giving us the ability to measure performance, implement, and track improvements based on the data that we're seeing. So take a look. Let's take a look at that data. On the ad front, the game did fantastic from the get-go. 40% of players engage with ads and watch on average 3 ads per day. You can think of that as 40% of your players monetizing in an alternate way. That's huge. And in a game like this, ads become a key contributor to your revenue. In this case, it's 40% of our revenue, and it's stayed pretty constant over time. There's usually this misconception that ads will cannibalize monetization, but similar to Epic Skater, we don't see that happening here. In fact, when we break down engagement between payers and non-payers, payers engage significantly more with ads. Think of this as your most valuable players getting the most value out of this system. So why does it work so well in AdCap? First of all, great surfacing. This means that I can easily and always watch an ad. In this case, there's a permanent button on the corner that I can always access, and it has a non-intrusive call to action whenever there is an ad available. Even with this great surfacing, we're always looking for improvements. And I did mention in Epic Skater that we added opportunities. New improvements doesn't mean new content all the time. A good example is a release that we did on AdCap where we made that ads button bigger and the hit target bigger as well. From making that small change, we saw an increase in engagement of 10%, and this increase has sustained over time. So remember, small changes can have big impacts. And AdCap is a game where you're constantly generating money, becoming richer and richer. If you watch an ad, you get a 2x multiplier and boost on all your investments. Who wouldn't want that? I would do that with my money. So if we think about it from the player perspective, not watching an ad means choosing to progress slower through the game. This is why our players always want that ad multiplier going. With a reward like this, watching ads becomes an integral part of the core loop of the game, and that's a really important piece. And good fiction might sound like icing on the cake, but it really does tie the whole experience together, delighting players every time they interact with ads. Every single person that has played the game that I talked to knows this line from the game. After all, advertising is the lifeblood of capitalism. And ads are also integrated into live operations of the game. This means that new content and limited time events also integrate ads. You can see on the chart that whenever we release a limited time event, we add engagement. So these events drive about 10 to 20% of players to engage with this content, ad-specific content. And the best part is that engagement with the permanent content doesn't really drop. All of this means that events increase impressions anywhere from 40 to 100%. And remember, this is exactly what we want to maximize, our impressions. So some lessons from AdCap. Ads have to be an integral part of the core loop of the game. Players will be happy to watch ads if the reward is truly meaningful and tied to the core loop of the game. And fiction, if it's delightful, it will encourage interaction even further. The last game I'm going to talk about is one that you guys already talked about, Bullet Boy. And this is another runner-like game by a Uruguayan studio, Pomelo Games, that launched last summer. And in many ways, Bullet Boy brings together the learnings from both Epic Skater and AdCap. For instance, we leverage Interstitial Ads too, again, those annoying pop-ups, and we made sure there were several places to watch ads and get different rewards that help you progress through the game. So again, tying it back to the core loop. And at this point, we had standardized our stats tracking. The reason I emphasize this is because all of our titles launch with this, which means that we can optimize each individual title performance, but we can also compare across titles, giving us benchmarks and trends to work with. Let's walk quickly through the options that we have. So first, you have the option to revive after dying, like an Epic Skater. And if you hit a wall on the last barrel, you get a second chance to just finish the level. The second option that you get to watch an ad is, if you didn't get to complete the level, we give you the opportunity to watch an ad to get a power-up that will give you that extra boost to complete the level and keep progressing through the game. And as I mentioned, we launched with Interstitials. Initially, these were showing up every 4 deaths. And there's a common complaint that Interstitials cause poor user experience and they end up hurting retention. So we lowered the frequency to every 6 deaths, so spread it out a little bit more. And what happened is after releasing that, we did not see a change in retention, giving us the indication that our players were tolerant to a slight disruption in play. I will emphasize that placement of these is extremely important. In this case, after a death, is not really interrupting core gameplay. A few quick stats. The game did great at launch. We got some great featuring in Latin American countries, getting some editor's choice. And the key here was to have all the ad opportunities optimized before launch. And this resulted in great ad engagement. So 30 to 40% of our DAU engage with ads depending on the ad types. And in a game like this, unlike AdCap, Bullet Boy doesn't have a lot of opportunities for in-app purchases. So this, combined with great ad implementation, means that 90% of our game revenue comes from ads, just emphasizing even further why it's important to have these optimized from launch. So some lessons: get creative. Adding more ad opportunities is good. Just make sure that you're integrating into the core loop of the game and you're helping players progress through the game. And again, interstitials don't necessarily hurt the retention, but they are disruptive to the user experience. So keep an eye on this and test the frequency and placement of this. And if you can do so in the form of an A/B test or during test markets, even better. And I'm almost done. So remember, the goal is to maximize your ad revenue. To do this, you want to both maximize the percent of players engaging with your ads and the number of ads they're watching, within reason. You don't want to go overboard. And make sure that there's an opportunity to watch ads in every session. This way, players make it a habit. And you can achieve this by designing ads as part of your game. Make them part of the core loop and make sure that they give meaningful rewards that help players progress through the game. And surface them in places that make sense and are easy to find for players. And remember, good fiction will tie all of this together and will make your ad watching a positive experience. All right, thank you. Are there any questions?
Hi. So you say it's important to have the ads in the core game loop. How do you help developers do that without harming, or like how do you advise them on that without really interfering with their game and their game design?
A great example of that is Adventure Capitalist. So the game already existed before we added the ads, but we did emphasize to the developers that this had to be a positive experience and tie back into the core loop. And they came up with a really great solution with the 2x multiplier that was a bonus that did not exist in the game before. And when we got that to mobile, they also rebalanced the game to account for that boost. So it was a lot of fine-tuning in the balancing to make sure that players, by adding that multiplier, wouldn't all of a sudden blow through all your content in half the time. So it is a lot of getting creative and making sure that what you're adding is not competing with other parts of the game.
Hi, you were speaking about mobile. Do you have the same approach on desktop, or do you think differently between desktop and mobile?
No. So about 3 months ago, we started doing a lot of these same implementations on our games on Kongregate.com on the web, and we've seen very similar results. So a few examples. A great example is Realm Grinder. It's also an idle game on Kongregate.com if you want to go and check it out. We've seen really good results just following these same principles.
Thank you for the nice presentation. I have a question. You mentioned that the whole company earns about 20% from the ads, while the games you showed actually earn 50% or more from the ads. This means that is only suitable for some of the games. What would be your guidelines to choose the game to promote ads on?
So we're actually changing that, and we're starting to add ads into all of our games. So this is just an initiative that we started really growing this last year, but a lot of our more mid-core titles are also integrating ads. And Battle Hand, the game that got Editor's Choice last month, has a really nice integration where you also get a multiplier on your battle loot for a period of time, and it's doing really well. And we're exploring this even further with all types of games.
Okay, so it's safe to say that so far you haven't found any boundaries for any of your games to implement this ads mechanics?
That's correct. We continue to explore.
Thank you.
I have a question, actually.
Yeah.
Do you think we're at the point where you can say that a game company can build a sustainable business only on ads without any in-app purchase?
I think it is possible, as seen by Bullet Boy, where really in-app purchases was a very small portion of our ads. We've seen that in a number of other titles of ours. Slashy here is one example. It also launched last year. Bullet Boy is another one. Runner games usually tend to see that a little bit more. So I think that it's a matter of volume. So if you have enough volume, if you get enough installs in your games, you can definitely do that.
Okay, so thank you, Tammy.
All right, thank you.